Sorry.
So the concern is that we've just become so attention deficient. You could watch
Would you
those
say
reels.
I wasn't listening?
Yeah, that's nice.
Nice.
All
The
right, edit it there. That's a good place to stop for the first.
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
yeah, that was enough. Nobody could bear to listen anymore. But I think you're exactly right. I think it's all TikTok driven.
Yeah.
TikTok's taken a longer form now, but when it first started, 15 seconds was the max.
Right.
15 seconds.
Right.
Amuse me.
Yep.
In 15 seconds. Right. And now, if you don't amuse somebody or spark an interest or something within 5 seconds, half a second, I don't even like to look at this person, right? They said that's how it used to be or maybe it still is at the Apollo Theater. That sometimes a comedian would walk on, and before they'd even get to the microphone, the audience would boo them so badly that they'd have to leave the stage.
That's rough.
Like I didn't even get to say anything. And yeah. So the audience there the reputation was brutal, but yeah, sometimes you got canceled before you got to the microphone.
That's like is it the first Toy Story movie where the pig is going through the channel changing on the remote, and they're like, "You passed it." He goes, "It's too late. We'll get it on the next time around," and he just keeps going
faster to go around the horn. Yeah, that's like a great analogy for everybody's life right now. Just whacking the remote.
Yeah. And I think what I've figured out this week in playing around with ChatGPT, in all honesty, is the tool value is obviously almost incomparable, right? It's going to know so many things in a theoretically neutral fashion that, my goodness, what a brainstorming tool, what a knowledge center. It's going to be better than the current versions of search engines, because it can tailor what it's providing. So it's got some amazing abilities that way. If we became dependent on it as the resource, right? Like this is the only way we know things, and whatever it tells us to do, we just go do that, and we have given up on applying any part of our brains, trying to pay attention to anything long enough to figure it out for ourselves. It's a real danger zone. So that's why I decided to play around with it using the Holy Word of God. That's basically where I went with it. So
yeah. Well, so kids do that now with just regular Google. We've talked about this. My daughter and I are watching a TV show, and I'm like, "Oh, they were in something else. What show were they in?" And I'm racking my brain, and without even thinking, she grabs her phone. She goes, "They were the werewolf in Twilight." You go, "Oh yeah, Team Jacob." Yeah, and then but if you'd ask her, how many times a day do you use search, she would have no idea.
Yeah, all day.
She didn't even know she searched for it. She needed an answer. Instead of not even spending a second, testing her own synapses for the information, she just grabs the phone, finds it, tosses it aside, done. Yeah. And so your analogy, they take ChatGPT and I don't have to think of anything.
Right. And that's I'm going to say this, but spiritually speaking, that ain't healthy, right? Like we know we know that us doing some of the work is part of the deal. Us wrestling with the great truths is part of the deal. And I guess maybe that's a little bit silly that I take it that far. But I'll give you an example based on what I did this week. I have a high school Sunday school class, and it was time for our next thing we were going to study. We typically just go through an entire book, and we had never done Philippians. And I've had this class like, I don't know, 15 years or so. And, you know, a lot of the books get repeated because they're just such good core books. And, you know, you wait for the next cycle around of freshmen to enter the class, and then you do that book again. And I don't think I've ever done Philippians. And it came up, and I was like, yeah, we should do Philippians. Great book. I know a little bit about it, you know, but I thought, you know, before I do anything other than read it, I read it first by myself, you know, just sat down and read it. I'd read it before. I'm just saying I read it in, you know, preparation. And I thought, you know what, I'll just throw it to Chat GPT and let's just see what it does with it. You know, will it be deep heresy, or will it, you know, be somewhat on the money? So the prompt I gave it, Mike.
You thought this thing was like channeling the devil.
I didn't think that, but I did think that I was asking a bit much of it to give me a something that was going to, you know, necessarily even be Christian, right? Like, you know, somebody else could study the book for a number of reasons, right? And so what kind of questions would it even give me? Well, I just said, write a discussion guide for Philippians chapter 1. That's what I put into Chat GPT.
All right,
And
so write a discussion guide.
Write a discussion guide for Philippians chapter 1.
All right, that's a beautiful prompt.
It gave me an introduction, 4 discussion questions, and a conclusion. And the 4 discussion questions are, you know, like, they ain't bad. You know, like in verses 3 through 11, Paul expresses his gratitude for the Philippians' partnership in the gospel and their ongoing support of his ministry. What does this passage reveal about Paul's attitude towards the Philippians and his relationship with them? So, like, that's literature analysis, right? Like that would apply even if you didn't believe in Philippians. That's what Philippians is about.
So you've interacted with this class before. Is that question too advanced for the high school level that you're working with?
What a wonderful predictive question to ask me, Mike, because I decided that I didn't want to stop there. And what I tend to emphasize in my Bible studies is what's called inductive method. And inductive is not like a Christian thing. Inductive just means, well, the steps are, you observe what this literature, this thing you're studying is. You're just observing what it is. And then you're going to interpret it. What does it mean? And then you're going to apply it to your life. You know, what does it mean to me? You know, that's basically the point, is observation, then interpretation, then application. And the idea is, you know, you're trying to prevent, it's not just teenagers who do this, but you're trying to prevent somebody from reading that passage and going, I feel like what that's saying is, I don't care what you feel. I don't care what you think. What does it say? You know, let's make sure we're clear about it before we start talking about our things, what we're bringing to it. So I asked it that. I asked it specifically, add more inductive questions to ensure participants understand the chapter. I mean, it's literally what your concern was, is what I asked it. So maybe I should be coming to you. I don't know. But what was interesting is that Chat GPT decided to tack on 6 additional questions. So it didn't put it into the flow. It just gave me some additional questions that were not bad. But like I wanted it all to flow together, and I wasn't quite sure it understood what I meant by inductive. So I specifically said, in inductive study, you observe the passage, then interpret the passage, then apply the passage. Could you revise the discussion guide to follow that format? And it nailed it. I mean, introduction, I think it was 10. Well, I'm sorry, introduction, and then 5 observation questions, 6 interpretation questions, and 5 application questions, and a conclusion. I'm not saying that I tried it out, by the way, and I'm not saying that I went like blow by blow doing exactly what it said. Some of the questions just weren't necessary or what have you. But I mean, it's not wrong in how it approached it. It took the passage seriously and let you literally examine what was there. So,
wow.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
so how much time you've done this before? How much time would you typically spend getting ready for, prepping for one of these classes?
Okay, so there's the rub. Here's the issue. It was all really good for making sure we covered the ground of what we needed to look at and think about and try to meditate on. And so that was the beginning of my work, right? What I really needed to do was sit down with Philippians chapter 1, use those questions, and go through and do an actual study. Like I needed to do that. And then my students needed to do that when it was class time. And in fact, we didn't make it all the way through all the questions because there was enough there that,
Oh yeah.
But I think that this gets back to the original point of, are you watching TikTok sized videos and becoming dependent on entertainment and diversion and not using your brain? That's a problem. And are you going to Chat GPT and saying, tell me how to apply Philippians 1 and running with it? Tell me what Philippians 1 means and running with it, instead of help me start doing my own analysis and wrestling with this, this chapter. Because if you're not giving yourself the chance to do the work, then you haven't wrestled and you're becoming dependent, and that makes me nervous.
Oh,
but
yeah.
What it provided us was an incredibly powerful tool that took the work seriously and let us evaluate it and make use of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing it. Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah, you want to actually go through the process.
Yeah.
But having it design the process steps, and it basically was giving you prompts to look for these things, to synthesize these things in your mind. Wow.
And
that's cool.
Maybe that's because I said, that I wanted a discussion guide, and I didn't say give me a synopsis of, or tell me what it's about. So maybe I did myself a favor there. But what I think is so interesting about this is that the inductive study is similar. You could use the inductive study and look at a Shakespeare sonnet, right? And it would be valuable because you're just going through a process and you trust the process to tell you what's really in there to help you really understand it and then find meaning in it. Well, it turns out, I think, I guess this is maybe where I'm coming down on it is Chat GPT is smart enough to honor the fact that there's a process there. And so it wouldn't matter if it, was created by Joseph Stalin himself. It would still be a process that you took through something that I, have found to be, God's eternal word that's got a lot of infinite value in it. And so you go through the process, you're going to hit pay dirt. And so we went through the process and we hit pay dirt. Of course, every other session with high schoolers, they're asleep. So I'm not going to tell you it was like the most memorable, moving experience we ever had. But I don't blame Chat GPT for that. I think the questions were pretty good and were really helpful to get us to really chew on the passage. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic, and I'm imagining the possibilities. Yeah, could I ask it to write the questions at a 6th grade level?
Right.
Have it scale it down, and if the questions were too complex for my audience, could I make it a little bit easier, and then see what it produces?
So I'm going to do that. Could you rewrite this at a high school level? Oh, and I probably am not logged in, so it's not going to let me do it. I thought it was going to be this big dramatic moment. Sorry.
Well,
it's a great question, though.
It is a dramatic moment when you think about, well, we know that it's read everything from 2021 back.
Yeah.
So the Bible, yeah, it's in there.
Right.
Somebody fed it to OpenAI at some point. So yeah, that's one of those that, yeah, there's, when you think about how much research and written, studies there are on the Bible,
Right.
that, yeah, this should be a home run for this thing to be able to do just about anything that you'd want to do.
So since you mentioned that, one of the application questions was, I can't remember exactly how it put it, but it was like, how here it is. How can we keep our ultimate goal of knowing Christ and sharing in his sufferings central in our lives? And I was like, that's a great question. I was like, that sounds familiar though. I feel like, and I had to Google it. Shame on me. That's from Philippians chapter 3. It quoted Philippians 3 and pulled it into the Philippians 1 study. I mean, that's not too shabby,
That's, I mean, you were gonna do the same thing had you done it on your own.
No, I probably wouldn't have. I'll be honest with
No,
you.
no, that was way too smooth. So yeah, that's yeah. There's certain things that, yeah, there's such a huge body of work on,
Right.
that it has to be able to do these kinds of things. It's read, probably not only the Bible, but every paper, every dissertation, every sermon that's ever been written on Philippians.
Right.
And so it's got all that stuff in it, access to, that it
Totally. And I wondered, I mean, I really just thought, there are plenty of scholars who have studied it and, have critiqued it and had problems with it, coming at it from an anti-Christian perspective, let alone a non-Christian perspective. And I thought, is that going to creep into the study? Maybe it's the fact that I asked it to do it inductively, but I mean, it just took it at face value. It took it for what it was and said, well, here's some questions that you could ask around this passage to understand it. And I've since learned, this just completely randomly came up, but I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and I didn't really make this connection, but they said Philippians chapter 2 has what is probably a summary of Jesus's life that predates the writing of any of the Gospels about Jesus. That Paul was writing the letters before the guys who compiled, sort of these biographies of the life of Jesus on earth ever, sat down and put, quill to papyrus or whatever. And so some of the stuff in there is really early Orthodox, views on Christ. So, that's really not a bad place for GPT to start in understanding Christianity. And maybe there's something to that I happened to pick Philippians to have it dive in and start investigating. But it took the passage for what it was worth and let me wrestle with it from there. I guess my question, and this is sort of where we spin it back around to the work world, is where is that line? I think spiritually, it's, pretty clear that you do need to be doing your own, dealing with God, right? Like that's, if you're going to sign up to be a Christian, probably fair to say you need to be meditating on God and on his word and letting God change you and wrestling with that. Maybe I don't care about algebra in some position I have at an engineering firm. Maybe I don't want to, learn how to do web design, and I'd like ChatGPT to, come up with the coding for, a new, homepage for my website for my business, because I'm actually a technician on something else and I don't give a rip about being technical with my website. Okay. I mean, I can see that. It still makes me nervous, and I'd like to define that line on when am I becoming really dependent and losing losing some ground in some way that will be really detrimental long term. Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have the opposite thought. so talking to two college kids right now, and separately, talking to them separately, and they both have the same laments. They absolutely detest classes that they're taking that have nothing to do with their major.
Yeah.
So I'm taking this class on event planning. Why do I have to know about finite math? They don't use finite math in event planning ever. Like, it'll never come up. Right. And then the other one is, studying art design and stuff like that. Same thing. Taking some math classes, taking a history class, and they're completely miserable. And one of them said, what happened to the apprentice program? The pre-industrial age apprentice program. If I wanted to be an artist, which is what this young person wants to be, they went and studied with artists.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. All right, you go and you stand there, you clean Da Vinci's brushes, right? You take out the trash, and then he teaches you, here's art.
Yeah.
Here's how we make beautiful paintings. And so, if I could have a tool that would take away all that other stuff, and allow me just to focus on the main thing that I need to accomplish, yeah, that's pretty good. Now, to go with your argument, if the machine starts doing my main thing, right? So if it starts creating art, then now we have a question of, what is that worth? What's the value? What am I bringing to this scenario? Right. When you think about your Bible study, only worked because you knew what to ask it, how to ask it, and you knew enough about the format of the discussion to ask it for a specific type of discussion format. That was the part that you added as the human being who has a holistic, knowledge of the world and how discussions work, and how different peoples had figured out how to have a great discussion with a group of people. So you had to bring something to that prompt in order for it to work. You could have got something pretty generic and pretty basic without that, but you made it really good because you had some extra knowledge that you could use to guide the tool.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I will try to I'll try to play both sides of the coin here. I am a big fan of micro, and that idea that, let's let people find a trade. Let's let people do something with their life that brings value to the world, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We should be encouraging that, and we don't need to be forcing them to go through a bunch of steps that they don't need to go through. I think the thing we've lost is, not only have we lost the apprenticeship, but we've lost the 7 liberal arts. That was the well-rounded education, and it's pretty esoteric at surface. It's astronomy. It's it's rhetoric. Rhetoric is anybody going to be a rhetor? Are they going to be regularly speaking in public, influencing others on their views? Well, yeah, they kind of will, right? Everybody's going to be doing that, and so there's a value there. Astronomy is a harder case to make, but I still would make it because it's about truth perception. It's about you figuring things out and being able to notice patterns and bring order to the world that you're living in. And I've heard it put by the Searcy Institute, which is a group that studies classical education. They say it's all of that is just a set of skills, 7 liberal arts. There's 7 bundles of skills that have the goal ultimately of helping you cultivate wisdom and virtue. If that's what you were getting out of your education, it wasn't going to help you make money right away. But if you were going to get an education so that you were a better human being, you were wise and virtuous, Well, we should all have that. And Chat GPT, I guess, will not be able to give us that, right? We will have to do some internal work with learning these skills and refining these skills to do that.
No, I think you're spot on. So yeah, there are certain life skills that we all need.
Yeah.
You know, I watched this documentary on Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett was he's a flaming introvert. The thought of public speaking literally gave him panic attacks. But he knew in order to reach the level of success that he wanted to reach, that he would have to become, astute at presenting to people and talking to groups.
Yeah.
And so he joined Toastmasters, and he forced himself to learn this skill. Yeah. So I think that's there's certain skills, rhetoric, public speaking. There are certain this life skills. Yeah, everybody should learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's we might even have to at some point argue over astronomy. Yeah. If I'm going to be an event planner,
yep.
Do I need how much in-depth knowledge do I need to know about astronomy? But when it comes to interacting with people and debate and making your point and all these other skills, I definitely have to have those.
Right.
They'll all come into play when I'm interacting with the upright bipedal carbon-based life form. So I think you're onto it. So if this tool makes it easier for me to focus, then it could be an incredibly important thing. One of the things when you watch any documentary of a somebody who's made it as a singer, or they've made it as an actor, or some profession where they've reached their peak, right? Sports, whatever. They all say the same thing. They all have the same story. They're like, I was in the school play in third grade, and the first time I heard people applaud, my rendition of a tooth, then I knew that I wanted to be an actor.
Right.
And I spent every moment of my attention focused on being that.
Yeah.
And now that they write me a check for $50 million a picture, and life is cool.
Yeah.
Some of these singers, right? These people who figured out really early what they wanted to do, focused on that, become really, really good at it.
Yeah. And that's one of the other 7 liberal arts is music. And what that could go a lot of different directions, right? But it's there are 3 that study language and 4 that study number. And it's not about astronomy, and it's not about music per se, but it's about the things that it does to your brain, the extra abilities it gives to your mind. And a lot of that has to do with numbers in time or numbers in space, like geometry, right? Music is numbers in time, but numbers in space, that's geometry. And astronomy is kind of both, right? There were patterns that people like Newton had to notice and put formulas to, in order for he had to invent calculus, for goodness sake, to be able to do some of the predictions that he was making with where the stars would go and the planets would go. All right, I'm drawing that a little further afield than maybe the average worker bee is going to do, but I guess that's kind of the point, right? Is you're not going to do that unless you do that, right? That's never going to get unlocked for you unless you go let your brain be stretched that way. Fun little fact for you. Kevin, oh shoot, I forgot his last name. I think it's Kevin Richardson, is one of the Backstreet Boys, and he was a jock from Estill County, neighboring county to where I live now, and here in Kentucky. And I think he took the drama class first, and his drama teacher said, hey, I think you ought to try out for the I think it was the musical. They had a high school musical, and he did, and it changed his life forever. And I've seen video of him, crying, talking about this teacher, who is the late Kathy J.R. Bettler, who did the exact same thing to me. I was in a drama class, and she said, hey, you ought to, and it really did change me, like that was that made a difference in how I approach the world. So so that's, you know, that's partly about the teaching, which is not Chat GPT, right? Like that's one soul to another. And it's partly about like me wrestling through the course that I had to go there, you know, like think like a racehorse going on a course, as much as thinking about a, you know, an academic course. It's kind of the same thing. You have to run the course or you don't get internally the value from it. So I guess there somewhere in there is a line for, you know, where we can use Chat GPT and where we can, you know, misuse AI in the grand scheme of things. Meanwhile, man, all sorts of exciting opportunities for what the tool provides. And you know, I have a feeling, I don't know, like if suddenly now we have an AI podcast, if that's what's happened, I have no idea what's going on, but it does keep coming back to, you know, workplace issues and things that are really important right now for us all to be thinking about. So hopefully this is, you know, valuable stuff for folks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the fact that you, being the wholesome goodness that you are, you know, immediately took Skynet and tried to use it for Bible study.
Hey, Skynet, you should read the Bible.
Yeah, Skynet. Yeah, yeah. Write me a Sunday school, you know, classroom discussion with some exercises.
Your version of me really does apparently line up with United States Customs Agency's approach to me, because I just got my global entry pass. I had to go up for my big interview that was scheduled like 6 months in advance and get fingerprinted and get, you know, a headshot, and they sent it off, and she, you know, the agent's telling me, you know, hey, this is how the process goes, and, you know, hopefully by the end of today I'll be able to, you know, pull the trigger and say that you're, you know, you passed the background check. And well, it's already come back. You're approved, which tells me I'm pretty vanilla. You know, they just kind of looked at me and said, yeah, that guy's not going to cause problems. But
that is squeaky clean, right? When you're
I am pretty squeaky clean in that sense.
When you're approved before you walk in the building. Yeah, everybody else is getting strip searched and cavity searched, you know, and Mark's sitting there like, huh, that wasn't that bad. Yeah, that's a great photo of me.
It was a total of 5 minutes and I was out the door. I was shocked because I had heard, you know, like, oh, they're grim. They won't smile. They won't crack a smile or nothing. Like, oh, it wasn't that bad really, but.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, when I was entering my fingerprints into the federal fingerprint database for the adoption process, so you put your hand on this glass plate, look like a copier, and
that's what I did.
It scanned it, right? So I'm standing there. You had to do it at the FBI office. So I'm standing there with this special agent, and it's doing its thing. And I said, hey, how long after this will you know whether or not you need to shoot me? And he, you know, yeah, no sense of humor that they're aware of. He goes, before you lift your hand from that plate. Like, well, that's pretty fast. Yeah, I'll just move very slowly. No sudden movements here. So yeah, that's but I passed. I mean, not as easy as you, but yeah. Back in those days, yeah, the record wasn't as murky.
You're like, what's his name from the Blue Collar Comedy Tour? You know, so the satellites are linking up with NASA, you know.
We caught the tater salad.
Tater salad, that's right. Ron White, that's his name.
Yeah. Yeah, you got the tater.
You got the tater.
Yeah. Well, you never know, right? I travel a lot. You go into a bank, you go into a restaurant, you get a burger, you know, and then you leave there and you go to the next town. So you don't know that right in behind you came in bank robbers, right? Or somebody came in and held up the Burger King, and they're dusting for prints. Well, there's some fresh, juicy Marshall prints right there on the counter. We've been looking for this guy for years. And then, yeah, they put your fingerprints in the database. Voila. Now
I got pulled over that way one time. My license plate was in the database incorrectly as a stolen car. And the Columbus, Ohio police were very polite, but very efficient. I mean, they had two guys pin me in before I knew what had even happened. Two cruisers pinned me in, and they very quickly realized that it was a mistake. But I mean, it took all of 30 seconds for me to go through an intersection, and I was on the side of the road.
You're like, wow, they take changing lanes without signaling very seriously here.
Now, Mike, I don't change lanes without signaling.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're that squeaky clean. Yeah, what was I thinking? Yeah.
But to quote Paul, to wrap up my religious discussion, he also said, this is a great saying. Jesus Christ came and died to save sinners, of whom I am chief. So that is exactly what you're looking at here. I want to make sure I'm clear about that.
Well said by a guy who still has all the tags on his mattress and pillows.
That's 100% right also.
That's right. All right, the good talk. Yeah, I think this turned out to be a podcast. Let's see what our announcer has to say.
So go ahead and tweet that, or share it any other way you want. As always, there are no rights reserved, no trademarks, no copyrights. Share it if you want to. And join us next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.
So go ahead and tweet that, or share it any other way you want. As always, there are no rights reserved, no trademarks, no copyrights. Share it if you want to. And join us next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.